technically good morning here. Hey David, what's up? How you doing? Good morning. It is actually Saturday morning here, and happy whatever day it is there, because it could be still Friday on the West Coast. Could be a lot later in the day somewhere else. Hope you're trying to enjoy the beginning of the weekend. I know it's a little bit rough right now. Good morning. I'm really not going to do a whole lot on the riots. One, because there's some things that I've already seen I would like to look a little bit more about before at least I discuss anything about the killing of this innocent man. But there's been some really strange footage that's been popping up all across down the line, and I'm gonna try to get a hold of those. But I'm gonna just really on a short note that these riots right now are more looking like Soros, Deep State, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter. So it's kind of gotten it written all over it. There are some squad cars in New York where they have spray painted Soros on it. So that's a little bit of a indication of what's going on. But again, I'm not going to really get into it right now. I hope this will be resolved quickly. The National Guard has been called out, I believe, in New York. The Secret Service is guarding the White House because they got protests there. So, they're rioting in Dallas already? Yeah, this has got a lot of stink on it. True, this is a very tragic thing that happened to this man, but what are you going to accomplish rioting, looting, and destructive behavior? Nothing. You're just not gonna you're not going to change anything, you know. And a good point has been brought up. Now, there was a young white lady who was murdered. She was shot by a Muslim policeman, I think 2 years ago, and nothing happened to him. She identified herself, I believe, and nothing happened to him. Where's the outrage? None of this makes it right. The rioting and doing this kind of shit is not going to bring this man back. It's going to do absolutely nothing for him. And I do have a clip I do want to play. I will try to get maybe Sunday, because I want to get things a little bit in order. But there are many riots going on across the country: California, Detroit, Dallas, New York, Washington. But it doesn't sound right. So what I'm going to do is more concentrate on other things, more politics, because a lot has been going on that people may have already forgot. because they're so embroiled over the the incident with the policeman and the black gentleman. So we are going to obviously start with Whitmer. Come on down. You are going to have to testify in front of Congress. And I'm going to watch every second of it. Whitmer's been called to testify before Congress about Michigan coronavirus response. This ought to be very, very interesting. I think she's got her problems cut out for her. She thinks she's really sly and slick, but she's not. Let's see when we have to go. Let's see. Whitmer will appear before the House Committee and Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigation at 11:30 a.m. with Governors Jared Polis of Colorado and Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas. Let me get my glasses on. The hearing is entitled "On the Front Lines with Governors Are Battling the COVID-19 Pandemic." The hearing will take place remotely and will be broadcast live YouTube. So make sure you get your popcorn on YouTube. There must not be a date set yet. Okay. So I guess that's not it. And then more wonderful news for the governor. Michigan Court of Appeals is hearing arguments on Whitmer's executive order powers. The Whitmer's executive orders during the COVID-19 pandemic have scored 0 legal victories, but they learned of an encountering development today. There has been at least 6 lawsuits filed, possibly more, charging the legality of Whitmer's orders that have kept businesses closed for over 2 months. Hemlock attorney Phil Elson said that the Michigan Court of Appeals did today in a is rare. He looks at this as a sign the court has concerns over governors as to how much too much power. The whole point of the lawsuit is to put the balance of power back to the government. He represents Michigan United of Liberty, a group that is organized protest in the state capitol, and filed lawsuits that claim that 2 laws Whitmer has issued dozens of executive orders during the COVID-19 pandemic unconstitutional. That will be great if we win. That will be awesome. While the Michigan Court claims judge ruled Whitmer's use of the law is likely constitutional, the Court of Appeals says it will hear arguments in this case. The government has said, I can do whatever I want. The governor has said I can do whatever I want because I have the power under this 1945 Act. Our position is she does not. She has to work together with the legislation because the legislators is the representative of the people. across the entire state. He said this is the first time the 1945 law, which granted Michigan's governor emergency powers, has been authorized to this extent, while the legislators has its own lawsuit on the matter. Elson's lawsuit doesn't just target the executive branch. We felt the legislature was just as much as the governor in this respect, where the legislature just faults the governor. He said Elson is going to ask the Michigan Court of Appeals to expect the decision within 2 weeks. Expedite. Which is not clear when the court will hear this argument. So this could be very good news that we've been waiting for. It is really still hard in this state. We have not fully recovered yet, even though only parts of the state has been reopened. We still have a lot of jobs to fill. Now, I'm really not a big fan of Politico, really. But it's kind of a big deal that we get our educational system back. We got to get rid of Common Core. It has no place in our schools. After working in a school for a while, and I've talked to teachers about this, they say that there are certain kids that cannot keep up with Common Core. There's going to be slower learning kids and medium and faster learning kids. Everybody learns differently, and this is something that the Obama administration should have figured out. We are not, I don't know what number we are in the world for education, but it's not very high. So we really need to work on this, and Michigan's own Debbie DeBoss has been working. Trump backs DeVos's plan to limit student debt relief. President Trump on Friday said the Education Secretary Betsy DeVos and her plan to make it harder to forgive the debt of defunded student loans borrowers. Trump vetoed legislation that would have blocked the policy by DeVos, limiting debt relief for deferred student loan borrowers. Trump backed DeVos over the objection of veterans organizations, which had urged him to sign the measures to stop the regulations that they say make it too difficult for their members to obtain help if they are cheated by their colleges. It is the 8th time that Trump has vetoed legislation since taking office, and the first in a domestic policy issue. The Congress Renewal Act regulations now handle back to Congress, where it is likely to either the House or Senate will be able to override Trump's veto. Excuse me, I didn't see the word. So that is about borrowers. I am a student borrower of loans. Of course, I went to college, and it is not easy, especially since this is the worst of it right here, because there is no work. Not a lot anyway. But when you are working less than part-time, it's harder to pay your loans back. Now, I am more than willing to pay my loans back. I don't need it wavered. I don't need it anything. I made the choice, and so has everybody else who has done it, to go to college. They need to pay it back. Go to Dan McDonald's, work, make a living, pay your debt back. I believe this happened yesterday. There's been new word on China. They're being more forceful to Hong Kong. And this is what the president has to say yesterday. Where's the sound?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm here today to talk about our relationship with China and several new measures to protect American security and prosperity. China's pattern of misconduct is well known. For decades, they've ripped off the United States like no one has ever done before. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year were lost dealing with China, especially over the years during the prior administration. China raided our factories, offshored our jobs, gutted our industries, stole our intellectual property, and violated their commitments under the World Trade Organization. To make matters worse, they are considered a developing nation, getting all sorts of benefits that others, including the United States, are not entitled to. But I have never solely blamed China for this. They were able to get away with the theft like no one was able to get away with before, because of past politicians and, frankly, past presidents. But unlike those who came before, my administration negotiated and fought for what was right. It's called fair and reciprocal treatment. China has also unlawfully claimed territory in the Pacific Ocean, threatening freedom of navigation and international trade. And they broke their word to the world on ensuring the autonomy of Hong Kong. The United States wants an open and constructive relationship with China, but achieving that relationship requires us to vigorously defend our national interests. The Chinese government has continually violated its promises to us and so many other nations. These plain facts cannot be overlooked or swept aside. The world is now suffering as a result of the malfeasance of the Chinese government. China's cover-up of the Wuhan virus allowed the disease to spread all over the world, instigating a global pandemic that has cost more than 100,000 American lives and over 1 million lives worldwide. Chinese officials ignored their reporting obligations to the World Health Organization and pressured the World Health Organization to mislead the world when the virus was first discovered by Chinese authorities. Countless lives have been taken and profound economic hardship has been inflicted all around the globe. They strongly recommended against me doing the early ban from China, but I did it anyway and was proven to be 100% correct. China has total control over the World Health Organization, despite only paying $40 million per year compared to what the United States has been paying, which is approximately $450 million a year. We have detailed the reforms that it must make and engage with them directly, but they have refused to act. Because they have failed to make the requested and greatly needed reforms, we will be today terminating our relationship with the World Health Organization and redirecting those funds to other worldwide and deserving urgent global public health needs. The world needs answers from China on the virus. we must have transparency. Why is it that China shut off infected people from Wuhan to all other parts of China? It went nowhere else. It didn't go to Beijing. It went nowhere else. But they allowed them to freely travel throughout the world, including Europe and the United States. The death and destruction caused by this is incalculable. We must have answers, not only for us, but for the rest of the world. This pandemic has underscored the crucial importance of building up America's economic independence, reshoring our critical supply chains, and protecting America's scientific and technological advances. For years, the government of China has conducted illicit espionage to steal our industrial secrets, of which there are many. Today, I will issue a proclamation to better secure our nation's vital university research and to suspend the entry of certain foreign nationals from China who we have identified as potential security risks. I am also taking action to protect the integrity of America's financial system, by far the best in the world. I am instructing my presidential working group on financial markets to study the differing practices of Chinese companies listed on the U.S. financial markets with the goal of protecting American investors. Investment firms should not be subjecting their clients to the hidden and undue risks associated with financing Chinese companies that do not play by the same rules. Americans are entitled to fairness and transparency. Several of the most significant actions we're taking pertain to deeply troubling situations unfolding in Hong Kong. This week, China unilaterally imposed control over Hong Kong's security. This was a plain violation of Beijing's treaty obligations with the United Kingdom in the Declaration of 1984 and explicit provisions of Hong Kong's basic law. It has 27 years to go. The Chinese government's move against Hong Kong is the latest in a series of measures that are diminishing the city's long-standing and very proud status. This is a tragedy for the people of Hong Kong, the people of China, and indeed the people of the world. China claims it is protecting national security. But the truth is that Hong Kong was secure and prosperous as a free society. Beijing's decision reverses all of that. It extends the reach of China's invasive state security apparatus into what was formerly a bastion of liberty. China's latest incursion, along with other recent developments that degraded the territory's freedoms, makes clear that Hong Kong is no longer sufficiently autonomous to warrant the special treatment that we have afforded the territory since the handover. China has replaced its promised formula of one country, two systems with one country, one system. Therefore, I am directing my administration to begin the process of eliminating policy exemptions that give Hong Kong different and special treatment. My announcement today will affect the full range of agreements we have with Hong Kong, from our extradition treaty to our export controls on dual-use technologies and more, with few exceptions. We will be revising the State Department's travel advisory for Hong Kong to reflect the increased danger of surveillance and punishment by the Chinese state security apparatus. We will take action to revoke Hong Kong's preferential treatment as a separate customs and travel territory from the rest of China. The United States will also take necessary steps to sanction PRC and Hong Kong officials directly or indirectly involved in eroding Hong Kong's autonomy and just, if you take a look, absolutely smothering Hong Kong's freedom. Our actions will be strong. Our actions will be meaningful. More than 2 decades ago, on a rainy night in 1997, British soldiers lowered the Union flag and Chinese soldiers raised the Chinese flag in Hong Kong. The people of Hong Kong felt simultaneously proud of their Chinese heritage and their unique Hong Kong identity. The people of Hong Kong hoped that in the years and decades to come, China would increasingly come to resemble its most radiant and dynamic city. The rest of the world was electrified by a sense of optimism that Hong Kong was a glimpse into China's future, not that Hong Kong would grow into a reflection of China's past. In every decision, I will continue to proudly defend and protect the workers, families, and citizens of the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now you got to remember, we are still in negotiations as far as trade, and they still have all of the tariffs in place. So it'll be interesting to see what the president decides to do, what China decides to do. Continues to suppress their people or loosen their grip. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to have the compassion to loosen their grip. They are brutal, unfeeling, as far as I'm concerned, regime. But, and I'm going to predict this, with this coronavirus, that China is not going to be much of a superpower too much longer, because they're going to have lawsuits up the ass. On top of, from many people who have died from possibly many other reasons that the administration can deal with or want. I do not believe they can fiscally sustain the tsunami, and not only from us, but from the world. The world is pissed. Cost lives, they cost billions of dollars. And I'm really pretty sure China's going to be paying one way or another. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe that the president is still working, or whatever stage he might be in, bringing pharmaceutical companies back to the U.S. and medical companies, because we cannot afford, if by some sure coincidence this happens again, which I do not believe that the coronavirus is coming back. I think a lot of the data is wrong. Yes, people have passed away, but I think the numbers are pretty minute to what has happened. A lot of these states, you just want to make sure people understand that the numbers have been fudged. There's been several doctors, real medical doctors, out there saying that the numbers don't fit the reality of the deaths. I do know people who have been scared to death from this, and it also puts a emotional tag on it, you know. So I think there's going to be a lot of backlash. I think Italy is one who's going to join us in suing them. So we'll have to see what happens. You know, the president never gives away his hand, and that's very smart to do. I think that's the best course of action. The president also had a round table. Here's a couple minutes of that one.
Been very outstanding. Our crime rates are way down right now in this country, and way down. The police have done a great job. Something like this happens, and you really say, that's so bad in so many different ways, and so unfortunate.
You see the...
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President,
it certainly seems like you're sympathetic to some of the frustration expressed by the protesters last night.
Well, these are the protesters. I thought it was about reopening America. I don't want to get into this right now. Again, same reason. But an amazing thing did happen. An amazing thing happened yesterday. Finally, we as people on social media are finally hopefully get a little relief. Because Jack Dorsey shadow bans us. They read our private messages. They delete our tweets. They do all kinds of things. They will do this type of thing, and they have. I have presented Project Veritas in their reporting of undercover that really Twitter and Facebook really hate us. And when it comes to Facebook, said it before, Governor Whitmer has expressed concern over protests in this state and wants all of that taken off Facebook. Well, Mr. Roboto Zuckerberg, he doesn't really care. He's acting like he's Mr. Good Guy. Dorsey just doubled down today. He's really being a total douche. It kind of looks like one too, anyway. But he has censored the president's tweets because he wants to. He's trying to be the big shot, but this is what the president's executive order was yesterday.
Give you a signed copy of what I'm going to be signing in a couple of minutes, and you'll see exactly what we're doing. They've had unchecked power to censor, restrict, edit, shape, hide, alter virtually any form of communication between private citizens or large public audiences. There's no precedent in American history for so small a number of corporations to control so large a sphere of human interaction, and that includes individual people controlling vast amounts of territory, and we can't allow that to happen, especially when they go about doing what they're doing, because they're doing things incorrectly. They have points of view, and if we go by that, it's actually amazing that there was a success in 2016, but we can't let this continue to happen. It's very, very unfair. And you look at the statistics and you look at what is going on, and I think everybody would very much agree with that, including Democrats, by the way. I saw quite a few Democrats are saying this is about time something is done. So let's see if they keep that decision after they hear that we agree with them. The choices that Twitter makes when it chooses to suppress, edit, blacklist, shadow, ban, are editorial decisions, pure and simple. They're editorial decisions. In those moments, Twitter ceases to be a neutral public platform and they become an editor with a viewpoint. And I think we can say that about others also, whether you're looking at Google, whether you're looking at Facebook, and perhaps others. One egregious example is when they try to silence views that they disagree with by selectively applying a fact check, F-A-C-T, fact check. What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group or political activism. And it's inappropriate. You look at what's happened, you look at where they're going, where they're coming from. I think you all see it yourselves. This censorship and bias is a threat to freedom itself. Imagine if your phone company silenced or edited your conversation. Social media companies have vastly more power and more reach than any phone company in the United States, more reach actually than your newspapers by far, more reach than a lot of your traditional forms of communication. Therefore, today I'm signing an executive order to protect and uphold the free speech and rights of the American people. Currently, social media giants like Twitter receive an unprecedented liability shield based on the theory that they're a neutral platform, which they are not an editor with a viewpoint. My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield. That's a big deal. They have a shield. They can do what they want. They have a shield. They're not going to have that shield. My executive My executive order further instructs the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, to prohibit social media companies from engaging in any deceptive acts or practices affecting commerce. This authority resides in Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. I think you know it pretty well. Most of you know it very well. I would think you know it quite well, right? Additionally, I'm directing the Attorney General to work cooperatively with the states. He's going to be working very much and very closely in cooperation with the states to enforce their own laws against such deceptive business practices. The states have broad and powerful authority to regulate in this arena, and they'll be doing it also, and we encourage them to do it if they see exactly as we've been seeing. It's what they're doing is tantamount to monopoly, you can say. It's tantamount to taking over the airwaves. Can't let it happen. Otherwise, we're not going to have a democracy. We're not going to have anything to do with a republic. Finally, I'm directing my administration to develop policies and procedures to ensure taxpayer dollars are not going in any social media company that repress free speech. The government spends billions of dollars on giving them money. They're rich enough, so we're going to be doing none of it or very little of it. As president, I'll not allow the American people to be bullied by these giant corporations. Many people have wanted this to be done by presidents for a long time. And now we're doing it, and I'm sure they'll be doing a lawsuit, and I'm also sure that we're going to be going for legislation in addition to this, and the legislation will start immediately. And I tell you, I've been called by Democrats that want to do this, and so I think you
That's
could possibly
a big deal.
have a bipartisan situation. But we're fed up with it, and it's unfair, and it's been very unfair, and we'll see what happens. Any questions?
Mr. President, given your concern with Twitter, have you given any consideration to deleting your account, to just walking away from this platform you've been so critical of?
Well, you know, if you weren't fake, I would not even think about it. I would do that in a heartbeat.
This is a stupid-ass question.
The news is fake. If you look at what gets printed in newspapers, if only the public could understand where, you know, they're reading a story and they think it's real, and it's not real in so many cases. And I'm not saying in every case. You have some great journalists. You have some journalists that I have great respect for. But largely, I find, at least in a political sense, there's so much fake news, it's disgraceful. I would do that in a heartbeat if I had fair. If we had a fair press in this country, I would do that in a heartbeat. There's nothing I'd rather do than get rid of my whole Twitter account. But I'm able to get to, I guess, 186 million people when you add up all the different accounts and add Facebook and Instagram. It's a lot of people, and that's more than the media companies have, frankly, by a lot. And so if I get a story that's wrong, I can put a social media. I don't usually use the word Twitter. I say social media, but I put something out, and the next day or the next hour or the next minute, everybody's reading about it. So I'm able to refute fake news, and that's very important. I'd like to ask the Attorney General, please, to say a couple of words, and he's very strongly behind it, backing it very powerfully. And again, we're going to be doing this. We're also going through Congress.
Bill Barr.
Well, as you mentioned, Mr. President, one of the things that I found has the broadest bipartisan support these days is the feeling that this provision, Section 230, has been stretched way beyond its original intention, and people feel that on both sides of the aisle. This was adopted 25 years ago to protect the fledgling industry, and its purpose was to allow websites that were serving as essentially bulletin boards for diverse third-party content coming on, to say that you're not responsible for the content of that third-party information. And it also tried to encourage these companies to take down things like child pornography or human trafficking advertising and things by saying if you act to remove this kind of objectionable material, you won't be liable for taking it down. Now it's been completely stretched to allow what have become really behemoths who control a lot of the flow of information in our society to engage in censorship of that information and to act as editors and publishers of the material. So when they put on their own content, like fact-check content.
Hello, I'm Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. I'm asking you to help my good friend Steve Daines from Montana.
Lindsey.
Onto other people's content, and when they curate their collection, and when they start censoring particular content, including in many cases at the direction of foreign governments like Communist China, they become publishers, and they shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of shield that was set up earlier. Now, this executive order is a very strong step toward addressing this problem. It sets up a rulemaking procedure that will eventually be under the FCC to try to get back to the original interpretation and understanding of Section 230. It also empowers the Attorney General to work with state attorneys general to come up with model legislation that addresses this at the state level. And we're preparing federal legislation, which we will be sending over shortly for review at the Office of Management and Budget. So this is an important step to get back to the original understanding. You know, there's a bit of a bait and switch that's occurred in our society. These companies grew because they held themselves out as public forums, as free public forums where a variety of voices and diverse voices could come on and be heard. That's how they grew. That's how they attracted the eyeballs. That's why people joined them. But now that they have become these very powerful networks of eyeballs, now that they've grown by holding themselves out as free public forums, they've now switched. And they are using that market power to force particular viewpoints. And that's wrong. And it has to be addressed not only through this executive order, but I think litigation going forward and by further action on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Do you have any questions for the Attorney General?
yes, actually, I do. Mr. Attorney General, not only have you been against Section 230 and the President has been against Section 230, the Vice President has said he's against Section 230. Do you believe that the executive order that the President is about to sign in any way repeals or amends Section 230?
No, it doesn't repeal Section 230, and I'm not against Section 230 if it was properly interpreted and properly applied, but it's been stretched, and I don't know of anyone on Capitol Hill who doesn't agree that it's been stretched beyond its original intention. I think this will help get back to the right balance.
Mr. Attorney General, can you give us more details on the legislation both you and the President referred to? What do you want to do in that legislation?
Well, we're still reviewing a number of possibilities, and it'd be premature for me to discuss.
And one of the things we may do, Bill, is just remove or totally change 230. What I think we can say is we're going to regulate it. It's a provision, and we're going to regulate it. You take a look at this as an example. This was just out. Twitter Moments.
Summertime and the living
On the Mueller witch hunt. So we won. We were in the right. You see what's happened. It's a total fraud. It was a total fraud. 76-1. Okay, 76-1. You look at it. You think that's fair? Twitter classifies the term illegal alien as hate speech, illegal alien, and viciously. You look at what China, I mean, just article after article. Here's one. This is the arbiter. This guy is the arbiter of what's supposed to go on Twitter. He's the one he thought, and he used CNN as a guide, CNN, which is fake news. He uses CNN as a guide. His name is Yoel Roth. And he's the one that said that mail-in balloting, you look mail-in, no fraud, really? Why didn't you take a look all over the country? There's cases all over the country. If we went to mail-in balloting, our election all over the world would look as a total joke. It would be a total joke. there's such fraud and abuse, and you know about harvesting, where they harvest the ballots and they go and grab them and they go to people's houses and they say, sign here. No, it doesn't work out. Now, an absentee ballot, you can't be there or you're sick, and you go and you register and you do all sorts of things to get that ballot, and there's good security measures, but where they send out, like in California, millions and millions of ballots to anybody that's breathing. Anybody in California that's breathing gets a ballot.
But, Mr. President, that's not true.
So
California
excuse me, wait a minute, I'm not finished. So here's your man, and that's on Twitter. And the amazing thing is he's wrong, and even no matter who it is, they will admit that he's wrong, because there's tremendous controversy on mail-in voting. And I can say this, the Republican Party cannot let it happen. Go ahead.
Well, you know Gavin Newsom, Governor Newsom, has not sent ballots out to everybody in California. They're only going to registered voters.
How many are there?
So,
How many are
so what your tweet said was not wrong. That was not correct. It was wrong.
Okay, oh, really? So when he sends out 28 million ballots, and they're in all the mailboxes, and kids go and they raid the mailboxes, and they hand them to people that are signing the ballots down the end of the street, which is happening. They grab the ballots. You don't think that happens? There's ballot harvesting where all of us, we had 7 elections for Congress, and they were like tied, and they lost every one of them because they came and they dropped a whole pile of ballots on the table. But you don't think they rip them out of mailboxes? It's all the time. You read about it. You can read about it. Take a look. They do worse than that. In some cases, they won't sell them, like to a Republican community, a conservative community. They don't happen to send the ballots to those communities. And there's no way of checking. No, you have to go and you have to vote. Voting is a great thing. Voting, we would be the laughing stock of the world. And if you just use common sense, you know that's going to happen. But they raid the mailboxes. They can even print ballots. They get the same paper, the same machine, nothing special. They get the same paper, the same machine. They print ballots, and Bill would have to do a great job to catch him doing it, or your state authorities would have to. But you have tremendous potential, and you have tremendous fraud and abuse, but you have tremendous potential for fraud and abuse. Go ahead.
Mr. President, you had said in one of your tweets that you would consider shutting down Twitter and social media companies. Did you actually mean you would want to shut down an American company?
Well, I think it's going to be, I tell you what, I have so much, it seems, influence over Twitter in the sense of people wanting to go Twitter because of what I have. I have a vast number, we have a number of platforms, as you know. We have millions and millions of people. I think this, if Twitter were not honorable, if you're going to have a guy like this be your judge and jury, I think you shut it down as far as I'm concerned, but I'd have to go through a legal process to do that.
How would you shut down an American
I don't know. I'd have to
company?
ask the lawyers. I'd have to go through a legal process. If it were legal, if it were able to be legally shut down, I would do it. I think I'd be hurting it very badly if we didn't use it anymore. I mean, we have other sites we could use, I guess, or would have to develop other sites. And I'm not just talking about Twitter. Look at Facebook. Look at the tribunal they set up at Facebook. This woman who, you remember testifying recently in Congress, her hatred was so incredible toward the Republican Party and me that there is no way you can get a fair trial. So this is not like it's supposed to be. This is not like it's supposed to be. So we're going to see what happens. And you know what? I guess it's going to be challenged in court. What isn't? But I think we'll do very well. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, as to potential litigation, can you discuss the timing of that and what is the remedy that you're going to be seeking?
No, what I was referring to, there is litigation going on all the time on Section 230 and its scope, and we would look for appropriate vehicles to weigh in and file statement of interest.
So you wouldn't be filing an individual?
Not necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, are you worried about the situation on the border between India and China?
India. He loves India so much he's never asked a question other than an India question, and that's okay. I just got back from India, right? I just beat COVID.
You're very
Get back. I know. They like me in India. I think they like me in India certainly more than the media likes me in this country. And I like Modi. I like your prime minister a lot. He's a great gentleman. Great gentleman. Yeah, they have a big conflict going with India and China. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah?
Yes.
They have a big conflict going with India and China. Two countries with 1.4 billion people two countries with very powerful militaries. And India's not happy, and probably China's not happy. But I can tell you, I did speak to Prime Minister Modi. He's not in a good mood about what's going on with China.
Mr. President, have you spoken to...
Wait, are you finished?
No, sir, so what, yesterday you tweeted about you want to mediate between India and China on this issue.
I would do that. I would do that if they thought it would help. If I were the mediator or the arbiter, I would do that. So we'll see. Go ahead.
Have you spoken to the family of George Floyd yet?
No, I haven't, but I feel very, very badly. It's a very shocking sight. Bill and I were talking about it before. It's one of the reasons Bill's here right now, because, as you know, we're very much involved. And I've asked the Attorney General, FBI, and the Attorney General to take a very strong look and to see what went on, because that was a very, very bad thing that I saw. I saw it last night, and I didn't like it.
Do you think those police officers should be prosecuted?
I'm not going to make any comment right now. I can tell you, I think what I saw was not good. Was not good. Very bad. Anybody else?
Mr. President, are you definitively staying in the U.S.-China trade deal?
We'll be announcing what we're doing tomorrow with respect to China, and we are not happy with China. We are not happy with what's happened. All over the world, people are suffering. 186 countries. All over the world, they're suffering. We're not happy. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, Russ, let's go. Come on, let's go.
Thank you.
I like the way she scoots them out like herd of cattle. It's like, come on, kitties. Let's see. I gotta stop that. So that's what happened as far as social media. There was also another situation.
Unbelievable art.
That I have very short with Zuckerberg. Mr.
Twitter
Roboto
decided for the first time ever to fact check one of President Trump's tweets. I wondered if you thought that Twitter may have made the wrong decision here.
We have a different policy, I think, than Twitter on this. I just believe strongly that that Facebook shouldn't be the arbiter of truth of everything that people say online. I think in general, private companies probably shouldn't be, or especially these platform companies, shouldn't be in the position of doing that.
Twitter decided for the first time ever to fact check one of President Trump's tweets. I wondered if...
So that's how quick it was. But really, when it comes to Facebook, they do. They're really bad at censorship too. They've censored me over a song which was not really a hit song. It was probably a generic song. And I got locked out of 124 countries over that. But explaining that it was not intentional because of copyright, supposedly. They did unlock it. But then there was one word I said. I won't repeat it because I ain't going to get locked out again. But it had to do with the D word. No, it's not what you think. But that was 3 years ago. Recently, they brought it up again, which I did not write. That was 3 years ago. They decided to bring it up again and put me on Facebook jail for probably a week. So, they're assholes too. But, really, the social media platform has been totally in disarray for a while. I would probably look into what happened to this MAGA donor. Well, I don't know if he's a donor, but he's a MAGA guy. Very rich. He bought many stocks of Twitter, the majority. So he has a say-so, and out does good old Jack. But I've also heard that he wants to keep Jack, which I can't understand. But I've heard nothing about him ever since. So probably should look into that. Now, if you are not really sure who had the stocks before, well, it was a Saudi in Saudi Arabia, our prince. So we've been actually dealing with the Saudi for all this time. But Jack is just a liberal hack. He's still butt sore like the rest of them because they lost the 2016 election. And they're just trying to rig it so we can't talk to each other. We can't see what the president has to say. And they listen, once again, into our conversations. And this is a fact. Project Veritas, go look it up. You're more than welcome because it's there. And I think there might be some new stuff on Facebook very soon. James O'Keefe has been tweeting, so we may be seeing something sooner or later. It should be what? Usually tweets about 3-4 days before he decides to release it. So I hope it's really good. I always like seeing it. I like these guys exposed for who they are. And they think, once again, they're a company. They can do what the hell they want to do. When it comes to... I have a clip from Hannity.
You get the sense that Twitter really didn't think it through. Now, I'm talking about the decision to hit one of President Trump's tweets with an absurd fact check. Now, it wasn't just that Twitter was wrong on the merits, but it revealed the staggering hypocrisy of its supposed mission. Not only are they attempting to editorialize and now censor the President of the United States, they do so while allowing Chinese propaganda accounts to run free on their platform. Well, today, the president responded, warning that he would move to regulate social media platforms that try to silence conservative voices. And he plans to sign an executive order on the subject tomorrow. But even before that news, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley called on the government to revoke liability protections for social media companies, which would drastically change how they're treated. Senator Hawley joins us exclusively tonight. Senator, explain for our audience how your proposed action would affect these entities.
Well, it would just take away the special deal, Laura, that they currently get from the government. There's a reason that Twitter and Facebook and Google have gotten so big and powerful, huge. It's not because of free market competition. It's because of the lack of free market competition, because the government has given them a special deal that Fox News doesn't get and the New York Times doesn't get, no traditional publisher gets. They are free from liability, free from suit. They've got a special immunity. And here's the thing. If they are going to act like regular publishers, if Twitter's going to editorialize about the President of the United States, then they ought to be treated like a regular publisher, and that's what my bill would do.
Well, I think there seems to be some opposition within the social media world to that, as Mark Zuckerberg spoke out today, and he said that's not what we do at Facebook. Does that give you a sense that, well, they've gotten the message pretty quickly that you go down this road, it's going to be a rocky one for you?
Well, I think that Zuckerberg is clearly quite eager to throw Twitter under the bus here because Zuckerberg doesn't want to lose immunities for Facebook. I mean, they want to keep their special deal. I'm surprised that Google isn't out there doing the same thing. Problem is that Google has also been censoring Americans who criticize the Chinese Communist Party. So these guys really all do this stuff. They've just gotten by with it for a long time. They picked on the president. Twitter did this time. And that's really elevated what they're doing, is that they are editorializing. They are censoring. They are making political judgments. And yet they're claiming that, oh, no, we're not like traditional media. We should be treated differently. We're neutral. We don't have any opinions. We just post other people's opinions. It just isn't true, Laura. And it's time to start calling them out on it.
Well, when you look at the head of the site integrity, it's called, this guy, we looked into his past as has some others. This guy, Yoel Roth, has a history of tweets that call Trump a racist tangerine. That's just right after the inauguration. He said there were actual Nazis in the White House. And it might not surprise you to learn, Senator, that he donated, of course, to Hillary's presidential campaign. And he says Twitter, though, is working to limit the spread of potentially harmful and misleading content. So why haven't his tweets then, why weren't they labeled as harmful? Personal attacks, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the standard.
Or how about the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Laura, who have been out there on Twitter, on social media, saying that United States soldiers actually started the coronavirus, who've been out there saying that Beijing has done nothing wrong with relation to COVID-19, that they took every available health measure. These are just outright lies and falsehoods, and to impugn the integrity of United States soldiers as the originators of the coronavirus. Are you crazy? Yet Twitter hasn't had a word to say about any of those things. This is a joke. This is Twitter showing their political bias. And again, if they want to editorialize like the New York Times, go right on ahead. You can do that. It's free country. They're a free company, but they shouldn't get a special deal from government because of it.
And Senator, are you shocked about just how willing so many in the media are to carry the water of the Chinese Communist Party when indeed history of abuse, subjugation, oppression, torture of political dissidents, and yet Trump is the problem on the world stage? Are you surprised by this?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, particularly when you see what they're doing right now in Hong Kong, Laura, you can see their intentions really laid bare. You know, China said that Beijing said they were going to improve democracy in Hong Kong, improve it by ending it, of course. And now they've got their thugs out there on the streets. They want to strip Hong Kong of all of its liberties, take away their judiciary, take away their right to assemble. And you see what they did with COVID-19. I mean, they unleashed this pandemic on the world because they were too incompetent and also, frankly, too evil to deal with it. I mean, they would not admit what they were doing. They would not admit they had a health problem on their hands. They suppressed the information. And because of this thing was allowed to spread into a global pandemic. So they are responsible, Laura, for all kinds of wrongdoing. And yet you see the media giving them, like with Twitter, giving them a free pass while they focus on the President of the United States. It's crazy.
Well, Senator, we can't wait to see what happens next, and we'll be looking for the president's executive order tomorrow. Thank you so much.
That's going to be real exciting when it, if it becomes legislation. If this hits the floor of the House, everybody call your congressperson, man or woman, and make sure this bill gets signed, because we cannot deal with this anymore. This is not right. It never has been right. We deserve to have free speech. We ought to be heard and not worry about nothing. Actually, there's a person I know who was just blocked out today. He was banned. Not sure why, but that's what happened. I'm going to just play a couple more because it's getting late, and the rest of the stuff I have is pretty lengthy, and I will try to get to it before Monday. How's that? David says mine is a DNI now. Yours is a DNI. I don't understand now. I'm sorry, David. I think the eyeball is very distracting. It just looks at you, man. Between that and being mooned. I got Lou Dobbs for you.
Congressman Jim Jordan joining us tonight. Congressman Jordan is a ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, also a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, great to have you with us. Let's start with the House vote tonight on this bill. And this is quite a spectacle. The president not threatening to veto it, but calling on House Republicans not to support it. But he didn't make a position known when you originally voted on the bill. Give us some insight here.
Well, here's what's happened. Good to be with you, Lou. Here's what happened in the last 2 months. So back when this first passed in March, since that time, think about what we've learned. We've learned 39 people unmasked Michael Flynn's name. We learned how they set up Michael Flynn. We've got these transcripts that Mr. Grinnell got released that show that when the whole Trump-Russia investigation started, there was no basis for doing the investigation. Something you and I thought all along, knew all along, but now it's true. Clapper knew, Brennan knew there was nothing there. Comey knew there was nothing there. So all that has transpired since then. And more importantly, we have the memorandum from Inspector General Horowitz, who is looking broadly at the FISA now. First, he looked at what they did to Carter Page in the Trump campaign. Now he's looking broadly at the FISA, and he put out a memorandum back in March, on March 30th, which said the 29 cases he's looked at, every single one had major problems. 4 of them, Lou, didn't even have what's called the Woods file, which is the file you have where you keep the main evidence, that the supporting evidence documentation for what you then take to the FISA court. So 29 American citizens who were spied on, every single one of those had major problems. So that's all transpired since that first vote. And the president simply saying, look, until we get this all figured out, we ain't reauthorizing anything. We're not doing it. So God bless the president. This is a good product we got working, but it can get better, and that's what the president wants to see happen.
Yeah, I will second your God bless for this president because of what he has endured, all that he's done for the country, and then have to ask the Republicans to stop more of the madness. I also don't quite understand the madness from the Justice Department, and perhaps you can give us some insight into that. Talking about given the cumulative negative effect of the legislative changes on the department's ability, to spy, they want the president to veto it for an entirely different reason.
For a different
reason.
What
in the hell is going on at the Justice Department, Congressman?
Well, look at what the president tweeted out, though, just a few hours ago. He said there should be no warrantless searches on American citizens, and amen to that as well. So this president understands it.
Amen.
He's lived through it. Mr. Horowitz has given us the evidence and done the investigations that show just how bad it is. So, like the president said, let's get to the bottom of all this before we reauthorize a program that was abused by Jim Comey's FBI and the intelligence community in the Obama administration. Hey, Lou, think about this. 6 people in the Treasury Department were unmasking Michael Flynn's name. In the Treasury Department, 6 different people. Holy cow, what was going on in those last several weeks of the Obama administration? We're now beginning to understand how determined they were to go after this president, how determined they were to cover up their scheme that they had back in their administration. And Jim Comey was the guy who was going to protect them because he was going into the next administration. And then when he gets fired, Bob Mueller's going to protect him. But finally, we are getting the answers, getting to the details, getting to the facts. And that's why we're holding this up until we get a better product for the president to sign.
Better product. I like the idea that you don't sign a damn thing. There's no excuse to be spying on Americans for any reason, and that crap has got to end. That's just one opinion. We were going to seek your opinion on what we're going to learn from. Thank you, sir. We're going to get your opinion on Lindsey Graham, sort of I guess he's an investigator now, and he's going to have Rod Rosenstein before him. We're going to get Congressman Jim Jordan's view of what we can expect. Former acting DNI Rick Grinnell setting former UN Ambassador Samantha Power straight in one of his last acts. Power claiming today Senator Marco Rubio has sounded the alarm about peddling Trump conspiracy theories and how that does Russia's disinformation work somehow. Grinnell quickly replied, after spending years peddling a Russian collusion hoax, but under oath admitting you saw nothing, forgive us if we ignore your new so-called warnings. We're joined once again by Congressman Jim Jordan. What do you think of the job Rick Grinnell did as DNI?
That grin.
Amazing. I mean, 3 months, compare 3 months of Rick Grinnell with 3 years of Chris Wray. I mean, Rick Grinnell got things done, and he's right about Samantha Powers and her so-called, warning. I mean, for goodness sake, they took a dossier to a secret court, a dossier they knew was false, they knew was unverified, they knew was paid for by the Clinton campaign, they knew was Russian disinformation, and they used that to get a warrant to go spy on President Trump's campaign. And now they're lecturing us? And then Jim Comey goes up to Trump Tower in early January in 17 and tells the president about that dossier that he already knew was false, that he knew was paid for by the Clintons, that he knew was Russian disinformation, talks to the president about it so they can leak it and the press will report the fact that he's talked to the president about it. And they want to lecture us. So You can't make this stuff up, but it's just ridiculous what we hear from some of these Democrats.
Ridiculous, tragic, and how do the Democrats find so many creepy people to aggregate in one place in the swamp? It is just it's appalling. It's downright scary.
39 of them unmasking Michael Flynn. 39 of them unmasking Michael Flynn's name too.
Well, they apparently meant to get it done.
Yeah.
Rod Rosenstein, first witness before the long-awaited Senator Graham committee, the Judiciary Committee.
Sure.
What do you expect to happen? What do you hope?
Well, no, I think it's great that Lindsey's bringing him in. Remember, Rod Rosenstein was the guy who was there during that critical time in May of 2017. Jim Comey gets fired on May 9th. Bob Mueller gets named special counsel on May 17th. Those 8 days are critical because we deposed Jim Baker, the former chief counsel at the FBI. And Jim Baker told us in that 8-day time frame, the people at the FBI were Rod Rosenstein was looking to wear a wire to record the President of the United States. Rod Rosenstein was looking to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove the President from office. Rod Rosenstein was talking about, and Andy McCabe and these guys were talking about an obstruction of justice investigation into the President. And what they ultimately settled on doing, their course of action, was to get Bob Mueller named as special counsel. And Jim Comey leaked his memos to create the momentum to get Bob Mueller as the special counsel. And 2 years later, and $30 million, and all the subpoenas and everything else they did, they came back with what they already knew. There was nothing there. So, yeah, I think Rod Rosenstein's a good person to bring in right away. And let's find out what he knows about wearing a wire, what he was doing about the 25th Amendment and these other issues that came up in that critical time frame.
I agree with you, David. The Republicans need to grow a pair of balls. That is a fact.
In May of 17.
Do you get the sense that Lindsey Graham this time means to actually find something out? Because he went more than a year after promising to investigate the investigators. Of course, he's immediately ruled out any possible prosecution of President Obama or former Vice President Biden. Strange ways to go, but then it is the Senate Judiciary Committee after all. Your thoughts?
No, I do, and they're going to subpoena a number of people. I think that is real important. I keep coming back to this fact. The insurance policy started off as the investigation itself. Once the president won the election, I think the insurance policy turned into, well, we got to make sure Michael Flynn doesn't stay as national security advisor in the Trump administration because he knows about intelligence. He might find out what we did. So they get rid of Michael Flynn, and Jim Comey's the guy who's going to travel into the next administration and protect him. When he gets fired, it becomes Bob Mueller becomes the special the counsel. That becomes the insurance policy. So there's a lot of people I think we need to talk to. Lindsey's going to subpoena them all. And I think make sure they come in and hopefully get to the bottom of all this.
And they're probably not going to like the results.
Hey, we're Diamond and Silk. Listen, President Trump's birthday is right around the corner.
So I'm glad that they're finally getting to the point where they're starting to subpoena people. Their asses are going to be under oath. And grab your popcorn. Hold on to your socks. Because it's going to be pretty wild. There was one more I want to play. This I just kind of came across and I thought it was quite interesting. Thought y'all might like it.
A volcanic rock on the edge of the East China Sea may one day be used as an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States Navy in the event of war in Asia. Japan's government announced last week that it's buying Magashima Island, an uninhabited outcrop 21 miles 34 kilometers from the southernmost Japanese main island of Kyushu. The island, most of which is owned by a privately held Tokyo development company, is uninhabited and hosts two intersecting unpaved runways that were abandoned under a previous development project. The Japanese government said the runways will be saved and used for U.S. Navy and Marine Corps planes to simulate aircraft carrier landings, though it did not give a time frame in which that could be accomplished as the deal still needs to be finalized. But once suitable facilities are constructed, the island could also become a permanent base for Japan's self-defense forces as Tokyo looks to strengthen its position along the East China Sea, where it faces competing for claims from China over the Japanese-administered Senkaku Islands, known as the Diaoyu Islands in Chinese. The purchase of Magashima Island is extremely important and serves for strengthening deterrence by the Japan-US alliance as well as Japan's defense capability, Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said in announcing the deal. US military officials in Japan said they could not comment on the purchase. Buying Magashima has been the subject of talks for years. Tsuuten Airport, the company that owns most of the island, finally reached an agreement with the government in late November. The island was identified as a suitable site for use by the U.S. as a permanent base for field carrier landing practice under a 2011 agreement outlining the realignment of U.S. forces in Japan. The $146 million deal also comes as the U.S. military is hearing calls to increase the number of its strategic bases in East Asia in the face of a growing Chinese missile arsenal. The majority of U.S. combat air forces in Japan are concentrated in just 6 bases. Recent studies, including one from the United States Study Center at the University of Sydney published in August, say with their current resources the U.S. forces would be vulnerable to Chinese missile strikes early in any conflict. One way to mitigate that is to spread U.S. troops and assets out among more bases. Over time, the diversification of Japanese and American bases, individual or joint, will be a trend, said Corey Wallace, an Asia security analyst at Frey University in Berlin. The alliance would be more resilient if bases and hardware were more dispersed. The theory goes, the more bases you have, the more missiles an adversary would need to fire to overwhelm its target and gain an advantage in a combat scenario. Permanent land bases are considered more valuable than aircraft carriers because they can withstand a great number of munitions. In theory, a carrier can be taken out with a single missile or torpedo. Battle damage to land bases can also be repaired much more quickly than a complex war machine like an aircraft carrier. When you target and sink an aircraft carrier, it is irreversible, said Colin Koh, a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. As for an island, at the very least it doesn't sink. You can take the time and effort to bring it back to operation again, Koh said. The new base is also a good sign for U.S.-Japan defense cooperation, which has seen strains in recent years on 2 fronts. Localities have put pressure on the Japanese government to move U.S. military activity away from population centers, and U.S. President Donald Trump has pushed allies like Japan to take some financial load off U.S. taxpayers. On the former point, Wallace says Magashima could eventually see operations from U.S. Marine Corps Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, taking some of the load off current airfields on the main islands and Okinawa. In the larger international picture, Japan is making the right move to keep its most important ally, the United States, happy, said Koh, the Singapore analyst. Trump is asking Japan to pay more. This purchase of the island is a move that is part of the whole plan to demonstrate that Japan is willing to shoulder more burden, Koh said. And despite the island's proximity to Tokushima, no one actually lives on it, allowing the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe government to try to balance between its obligation towards the alliance as well as to its domestic constituents, he said. As a practice field, Magashima will also be more convenient for U.S. carrier pilots, many of which now fly out of Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni on the Japanese main island of Honshu. The flyers now practice carrier landings, known as touch-and-go landings, on Iwo Jima, also known as Iwo-2, almost 850 miles 1,360 kilometers away. Flying to Magashima would cut the journey by 600 miles 960 kilometers. Down the line, Wallace says Magashima could provide for some new cooperation between the U.S. and Japanese militaries, specifically involving F-35 stealth fighters. Japan has announced it will be upgrading its Izumo-class helicopter destroyers to handle U.S.-made F-35B jets, fighters that now fly off American amphibious assault ships, essentially small aircraft carriers. It's also purchasing dozens of the short takeoff, vertical landing jets. Japan does not have pilots with any experience landing fixed-wing aircraft on carriers. However, this new facility might offer the opportunity over time for Japanese to gain some familiarity with such operations alongside the U.S., not only to utilize their own carriers but for cross-decking, sharing, with the United States, Wallace said. Having Japanese F-35s on American naval vessels would be quite a signal, he said.
That is an amazing thing because, you know, that the Chinese have made their own island. They actually built an island. It's basically in international waters where they're claiming it is theirs naturally. So I think that would be a really good move for both the ally nations. And, you know, there over the years, there have been so many incidences of misconduct with the military in Japan. So that will keep them away from the most populated areas. It's not really bad that I'm aware of, but there have been some serious things going on, like assault. David says, funny how the Ukraine gets... Oh, it's going to be funny when Ukraine gets the Bidens. It will be hilarious. And Hunter Biden is subpoenaed. He's going to be subpoenaed. David also writes, I guess you finally had time to check out the South China Sea. Yes, a little bit. A very little bit. I have been extremely busy. And usually I'm not. So, and I really like this. I thought it was good information. And when it does come to China, many years ago, I think it was like in the late 90s, that China has claimed, I'm going to say claimed, they had a aircraft carrier killer missile. So it's definitely important that we kind of limit and keep our carriers out of danger. See, I think I had one more. I will save the rest for next time, because I still got to get some more information on this, because it stretches over a couple days. One last thing. No. One last thing that I'm going to play for you before head on out.
And they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together rookie, the Democrat family. Their house should be a prison where people can't go see them. They send them all to prison, the Democrat family. Beat. Cheat. Deplete. So get Pelosi shawl on, a broomstick with more claws on. We're gonna pay a call on the Democrat family.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining. I very much appreciate you. I'm going to open up the chest for people in D Live. once again, I very much appreciate all of you, even on replay. Please share and like. Please leave a comment if you wish, good or bad. It kind of gives you're welcome to have your voice heard. God bless the president and the vice president, military, law enforcement, men and women of all branches, and Space Force. We can never not forget that at this time. And David, you got, as soon as I can see it, 50 lemons. Congrats. And the doctors and nurses on the front lines helping everybody 24/7 all year round, and first responders. Oh, you're welcome, David. And Border Patrol, Coast Guard, and the wonderful people of the United States. Please be safe out there right now. It's a kind of a dangerous time right now while all the riots are going on. With any grace of God, this will deplete very soon. There are National Guards deployed in New York, I believe Atlanta, and of course Secret Service in Washington. I have not heard about any of... Yes. They're out there protecting the White House. Of course, it's Antifa, Black Lives Matter, as I've mentioned, and George Soros. So, if you have, I don't care what your race is, there is no call for this. You can protest peacefully, just like we can peacefully. There is no absolutely logical reason for the destruction and behavior that is going on out there. I actually seen a elderly woman in a wheelchair being picked on by a couple of guys, and they used a fire extinguisher on her. That's just fucking disgraceful. It really is. Part of my P's and Q's, but oh well. So, everybody take care. Don't forget Promises Kept tomorrow and Speakeasy. And I shall try to get back with you Sunday. Hopefully, I will be able to make it. I won't be too busy. I've been working on a lot of different things. So, God bless you all. I really do appreciate you. Have a wonderful Sunday.